guys, this is Donna with Love Rocks, and we have a springtime gnome for today. I'd like to start by saying thank you for all of you who have supported our channel. Welcome for all of you who are new to the channel. I hope that you subscribe. It will help with pushing our channel out there and allow us to do more videos. Also, if you subscribe and comment, you'll be put into the drawing for this rock. So I'd like to get started now. This week, I wanted to do a springtime gnome. I tried to go back and forth between doing a gnome and something else. And, I'm trying to spice it up a little bit and not just do gnomes. But this guy really kind of spoke to me. I really wanted to do something with springtime and with my gnomes. People really enjoy them. I love doing them, so that's why I picked another gnome for this week. So I definitely stayed in the pastels, and I just had him leaning over and sniffing a flower. Please don't judge my flower. It's definitely not my strongest point for painting, but it looks like a flower, so that's all I care. I just wanted to do something a little whimsical with him, and this I thought was kind of cute. Like everything that I paint, don't forget, you can add, subtract, anything you want with these pictures. I try to do whatever my main focal point is going to be, which this time was the gnome. Then I like to do something that's going to support it. In this picture, it's the big flower. And then I go in and make sure that I've got balance, which I didn't. I needed something back behind him. So I wound up putting just some little wispy flowers back there behind him. And I do have a bumblebee sketched at the top above the flower. But once I got to that point, it seemed to be a little too much, seemed to be a little chaotic. So I pulled him off. I tend to paint very simple. I like my pictures to not have too much going on. That is just my preference. You could do anything. You could put some clouds in there. You could put some background like a sunset or a sunrise. You could do him in the mountains. You could do anything that you wanted. And definitely you don't have to do a flower. You could do trees. You could do them in a meadow and have a whole bunch of wispy little flowers all around him. You could do just about anything. This was something that I wanted to try, and I found him to be adorable. So I just wanted to throw him in there smelling a flower. So I apologize if there's any background noise. I'm recording back in the very back of my house. We've got a bunch of construction workers here today. They're putting in cabinets and painting, and so I was trying to get away from the noise as much as possible. So let's see. Let's start with, what do I start with? I tend this time to start with the flower. The reason I started with the flower was I wanted to make sure, because I'm not very proficient at flowers, I wanted to make sure that was set. And then I could make sure and position him so that he was sniffing the flower. So I started with the flower. You can start wherever you want, but that was the reasoning behind doing the flower. I got the flower in. I didn't like the leaves that I put in. And when you're painting rocks and you're leaving the background natural, there's not a lot of forgiveness. You put something in, that's most likely going to stay. I've overpainted a line or two, and I've been able to I've got a real short bristled brush. I can put a little water on that, and I can kind of scrub it. If it's still wet, I can kind of scrub it, soak it up with a little napkin, and I can take off a little bit of overpaint once in a while without any problems, without messing up that natural rock behind it. But those are small areas. I put the leaves in. I didn't really like the leaves. And so I wound up adding a lot of grass around this flower just because I wanted to tone down those leaves. It's not that I didn't like them. It's just I wanted to tone them down. It just seemed to be too much. So if this had been some sort of a consignment piece, I probably would have finished the rock and used it for a hiding rock and redone the rock because I didn't like the way the flowers turned out. The other thing is, if it's a consignment piece and it's something that I've never done before, a lot of times I will pre-paint on paper before I put it on a rock, just so I know where I'm going to lay everything, just so I know if I'm going to come across any problems, then I'll come across it on paper instead of on my rock. So those are the two ways that I kind of deal with making mistakes. So anyways, I put this flower in, I added a little more grass, just to kind of blend it in a little bit. And then I started on my gnome, and I definitely wanted to stay in the pastels. So I got his little pastel hat. I always start with the hat. Again, for me, it's comfort and proportion. So that's why I do it. You can do anything that you want, but that's why I do it. And I got him in, and I got his coloring in. And with pastels, it's not the same as your deeper, brighter colors. With pastels, you want to keep that pastel color. So I've been trying to find ways to still highlight and still shade and still keep my colors. So with that little hat, what I did was I used a lot of white that I mixed with my with that light turquoise color. And that's what I did for the highlight. And then for the shading, I did the straight coloring, the turquoise, that light pastel turquoise. And then I come back in with a lighter gray. So how I did that was I just mixed a little bit of black, a little bit of white, and I got it down to a pretty light gray. You don't want it to like strike you in the face when you look at it. You want it to be kind of vague. But I kind of skipped around and gave some shading with that gray, and that way I kept my pastel color. I wasn't mixing it. I wasn't coming up with a whole different color. It is definitely a gray. You can see it. It's there. And it didn't take away from my pastels. So that's how I dealt with the hat. When I finished with the hat, I put in the edging, which would be the pink. And I did shade with the pink a little bit more. But what I did was I just used a darker pink. And pink, I feel like, didn't pull away from my pastel. And so I wound up using that. It's a brighter pink, but definitely a darker color. And I used that for my shading. And it worked well. It kept my original color, but still allowed me that opportunity to keep that pastel. So anyways, that's what I did with the pink. The next thing I do after the hat is I go for the nose. And I always use the same 3 colors for my nose. I use the camel, which is like a taupe color, and I use Indian red, which is for me, I like Indian red because it's kind of a true red. It doesn't fade into the pinks. It doesn't fade into the purples. It stays there with a nice true red, and so it's easy to mix with. So I use the red, the Indian red, and then a little bit of white, or baby pink, and I'll mix that and get the dark color I want. And honestly, you want that nose to be pretty dark. So I add as much red in there as I can without it going red, and the camel color, and really get that dark in there. Get those nice, crisp, round lines so that you've got a very, very nice, crisp edging on that nose. And here's why. Because that dark area, you really want that dark area to stand out as dark. That's where that nose is concaved and it's going back around under or along the hat and underneath, like to his face and to his mouth and around to his cheeks. So then afterwards, you go back in with really, 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 really a little bit lighter. You take that color and you add some more white to it, and it's a very tiny, tiny amount. And you go into that and you put that in as your highlight on the top of his nose. And it blends. Now, you have to do it while both of them are wet in order to blend the edges. I also usually add a tiny, teeny, tiny bit of water, and it helps me to get that blend, and it comes out very nice, okay? So that's the nose. And I tend to put the nose in second because trying to paint around the nose when I'm doing the hat is ridiculous. And it's already hard enough to get the bottom part of the beard, or the top part of the beard right up underneath the nose, not to get into your nose. So I tend to do it after the hat so that I can make my detailed line of where that nose is over the top of the edge of the hat. And then I can put some shading back right over the bridge of the nose on the hat. And it appears that the nose is pushing that hat up a little bit, which gives you that shaded edge of the hat. And so that's why I do it. And then I will take and put in my dark colors. My dark colors would be either black or gray or both. Around the very, very, very edge of the bottom of the hat and around the nose. And try not to make it look as if it's a line. If you make it look like a line, you just make a line right there. It's really hard to hide that line once you start putting the beard in. So it's better if you have kind of a little wider brush, and you just kind of put it in haphazardly along the bottom of the nose, and definitely along the edge of that hat and coming down. Just kind of swipe it down into that area. And then I will take the gray, and I will usually go all the way down to where I'm going to put the bottom of his beard. And then towards the bottom, I will use a little more black so that there's definitely some shading down there. Okay, so we've talked about how to get that nose in and how to put your background colors in that space where the beard eventually is going to go. And then the next thing that we're going to do is get all of his clothes in. The beard's going to lay on top of his clothes, so you want all of those clothes in. The arms, the gloves that are going back behind him, I wanted to make sure that you could see that there were two arms. So I did use the hot pink to try to do that. I wanted to make sure that you could tell the arm from the tunic, and you could tell the one arm from the other arm, as well as where the gloves were. So I did use some darker pink on all of that, just so I could get that shading in and show those areas. And I think it turned out okay. So otherwise those arms kind of blend. It's really hard to try to get. It's really hard to try to get those arms not to blend if you don't put in that heavy shading. So anyways, that's enough about that. I do, like I said, make sure that I get all that shading in, and all the highlights, anything that I'm going to do on that clothing before I start putting that beard in, because I want to lay that beard on top of those clothes in order to make it appear that those are behind it. If you're new, please watch some of the other videos. There's a lot of information on supplies. I will touch lightly on supplies. I use acrylic paints from Folk Art. I use multi-purpose acrylic paints. I use just basic rocks. My dad picked me up about 300 rocks, literally out in the middle of the mountains, put them in some crates and brought them to me here in Texas. He did it in Arizona. And so these are just basic rocks off the ground. So you can get your rocks that way. Please check your regulations in your state. Make sure that you're not in an area that you're not allowed to take rocks, okay? And definitely don't take them out of, an area in the city limits that you shouldn't be taking them. I've heard of people doing that, so don't do that. Also, I buy rocks. I buy them from Lowe's. I can get, a little bag of rocks that'll last me, I don't know, a month and a half with all my painting. And, I pay less than $20 for them. They're river rocks. You can get them in light colors, dark colors. The other day I was in there and I actually saw some that were kind of a tan color. I hadn't seen those before. They're nice and round and soft. Out of that, you probably get maybe 15, 20, like really what I would consider a perfect rock, which is 2 or 3 inches by 2 or 3 inches. It's very smooth surface. It's round in shape, sort of flat. Those painting rocks that are just the perfect ones to paint. You probably get 15 or 20 out of a bag like that. The rest of them are, broken or oblong, or they've got a big old indention in them, or they're rough, just things like that. So the rest of them I use for hiding. I hide a ton of rocks. I have rocks in my vehicles. I have them in my purse. Half the time I find them in my pockets, especially my coat pockets with it being winter. The other day I picked up a jacket and the pockets were full of rocks. I was like, what the heck? So I carry rocks with me everywhere, and I've hid them. I've given them away. If there's somebody that, has just been, looks like they could just use a little lift, I'll give a rock away. I've left rocks everywhere. I've left them on the side of the road. I've left them in parking lots. I've left them on people's cars. I will put a rock just about any place. And I love doing them, and I love seeing or actually hearing. I never see anybody, but I do hear about how people love the rocks that they find, and it just warms my heart. So it's good for everybody. So paint some rocks and get them out there and give them away. People really, really love them. So that's what I do with my rocks. As far as brushes, right now I'm using Benicci brushes, Benicci brushes. They come in a package of like 10 or 12 for under $20. You can get them off of Amazon. I really like them. They're comfortable brushes. They're inexpensive, and you just don't want expensive brushes when you're doing rocks. At least I don't. So that's kind of my stuff that I use. It is listed in the description. If you have questions, you can always get a hold of me. Jump on my Facebook. The link is in the description as well. And that way, if you ever have questions, you can always message me. I really hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you guys in another week. Have a great one.